and go ahead and get started. And whoever jumps in late jumps in late. But we're going to do I'm going to lead the roundtable this week, and then Jerry is going to lead it next week, and then Logan the following week. And at the end of the meeting, I'll kind of let you know what Jerry's agenda is. It's a pretty lengthy agenda, so I'll let you know at the end of the meeting what that's about. But today we're just going to talk about onboarding clients, and the agenda is a little bit what I send out is a little bit off. So if anyone wants to pull it up so they can follow along, that's great. But mine is off a little bit because I'm going to do something similar that what Ian did in his last one. We've got different discussion topics. I'm basically going to stop at each discussion topic and go, open it up for questions. But then also I'd like, anyone in the room that has, managers, senior recruiters, anyone that has a lot of experience working with clients, please interject your own experiences into that, because basically what I'm going to do today is I'm going to be taking 3 examples of clients that I particularly work with. And one is a brand new client, less than a week old. One is about less than a year old, and one has been with Curari for 20 plus years. And I'm going to be using each of them as an example on what we're talking about in our different discussion topics, but definitely stop at each topic, get your guys' questions, but then also for some of the people that have a pretty healthy stable of clients, please interject and give your own thoughts, because I'm going to be giving some info, but everyone else's input on this is just going to help the conversation that much more. So on each of the discussion topics, and also I'd say that, the one thing I'd ask out of everyone, if you can please fill out the survey, that would be really helpful. I've gotten a couple responses, but haven't had a bunch. And those surveys are really important for us to know just how we can improve this and different meeting topics. So if you guys could do that, that would be great too. So the first topic I wanted to start off with is, so I might get in a little bit talking about, closing the client, but 95% or more what I'm going to talk about is they're your clients. We've got them set up. We've got the CFA signed. What do we do? So I'll talk a little bit about closing clients, but most of this is all about existing clients. And so one of the first things I do, and it's pretty much through the course of the entire history of the client. And if I can't do this, honestly, the client relationship hardly ever works out, is the building a rapport. Building a rapport with the clients, I think is absolutely essential. And because it seems like the more with building rapport, I look at it 3 ways. They know you, they like you, and they trust you. If a client likes you and they trust you and they know you, the thing with clients is that very rarely are we their only recruiting company that they work with. Usually they're working with several. And so I'm wanting to make sure that us as Curari are their top choice. We're their go-to. When they go to conferences, that they're talking about us. I've had some people that have gone to conferences and they've met representatives from Christus or Mayo, and they've talked about Curari. We are their go-to recruiting company. And I think a lot of it is obviously we have to produce. Without producing, we're not going to be their go-to company. But I think a lot of it has to do with rapport, that knowing you, liking you, and trusting you. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that. And I'm going to share my screen, because one thing I do in the sales process is I follow something called the 7 steps to every sale. I learned about this over 20 years ago in a previous business, and this is exactly what I follow. The entire recruiting process that I follow is based around the 7 steps to every sale, which Chet Holmes came up with originally. I doubt he's the originator of it, it's just who I learned it from. But I do this not only to sell a client, but then also pushing the client through the process in each step that we take. So I just want to go over that really quick, because I think it's really important. I'm going to... Okay, can everyone see the document that we got pulled up? Or at least one person tell me they've seen the document?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Good to go.
So the 7 steps to every sale, and I think it's very much in line with what everyone talks about here at Curari, is that it's steps 1 through 6 in order of importance. So step 1 is the most important. Step 6 is the least important, and step 7 is equal importance to step 1. And basically, the first step is building rapport. Building rapport with whether it's candidate, client, whatever it is. So when I'm talking to a client for the first time, I'm trying to find common ground. The majority of the clients, whether it's Reed Health or a client I have out in Virginia or other clients that come to mind, the majority of the time when I'm talking to them on the phone, it's not even about recruiting. It's about common ground that we have set. In the client in Virginia, 90% of our conversation is based on hockey. We talk about hockey because I live in the state of hockey, and her son is living in Wisconsin because he wants to play professional hockey. So we talk about hockey. We talk about NHL hockey, local hockey, that kind of stuff. I talk to like the people at Reed Health that we have now have a great relationship with. We're talking about Rebecca, who was recently married, so we're talking about her wedding, new marriage, and everything that her and her husband are going through. Mackenzie just had a baby, so we're talking all about her baby and trying not to talk about myself at all. It's just like asking questions about the baby because Mackenzie and all new moms want to talk about the baby. So that's common ground that we come to, and it's like I know I stand out from other recruiters because they know me, and they I think because of that, I think it just not only the production that we do for them, but also the just knowing us. So the building a rapport is super important. And then the equal important, which is the 7th step, is the following up. And I know we, as a management team, talk about this at nausea. You have to be a champion at following up. So, all of these clients, it's like we preach constantly, name clearing emails, second follow-up, takeaway, through that whole process. So it's being a master at following up. Or when we're going through that process of trying to secure a client, it's that initial conversation, and then we're sending a follow-up email immediately after talking to them, following up emails, a couple days, 3 days, just constantly keeping in contact with them until we can get them to close. And then at that point, once they become a client, and this is the new client we have, I just can't assume that they're going to do everything right. So we started off by setting expectations that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But then I wanted to follow up with them on a daily basis to make sure that we're getting the processes going with them so we can kind of mold them into a very productive client. But in order for me to do that, I have to keep in constant contact with this client until we get things smoothly working. And once we get things smoothly working, I can step back a little bit on the follow-up. But initially, once a new client has started, I'm trying to be in contact with them daily about every new candidate we're introducing, the process and timing and name clearing emails and send outs and the importance on the timing. But it's that follow up along with building a rapport with a new client or one that you are trying to get is very important. And then from there, it's, we're talking about finding a need, and their needs being, what their jobs are. What jobs do they have? But most importantly on that, we want to dig into the jobs as we've talked about previously in other roundtables on getting to know everything about their job, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Not just, all right, what are the details, but what are your ideal candidates? What are not your ideal candidates? All these different questions that we can ask them to really understand what their need is. This brand new client that we have, which is a telemedicine client, they did everything. I wanted to know everything about what they were looking for. So they shared their mission statement with us. We got into the weeds on exactly the type of doctor that they were looking for. And most importantly, what kind of doctor they were not looking for. So when we're screening candidates, when you all are sending me candidates, we can look at it and say, does this fit their need in what they're looking for, or does this not fit their need? So finding that need, which then I think can build a lot of value. If we're a mentor of mine said that the most interesting people in the world are the ones that are the most interested, and you can only be interested in someone by asking questions. So if I'm asking tons of questions to the client, at the same time, I'm building value because I'm finding out a lot about them, and they're seeing us as someone who's truly interested in their needs, what they're looking for, and that's starting to build more value in us as Curari. So once I know what their needs are, then I can build value in what Curari can do for them. If I'm trying to land them as a client and I look at what they need, rather than starting off saying, this is Curari and this is all we can do for you, I'm starting off by asking them questions, trying to figure out exactly what they need, uh, from us, what they're needing for us to find, what their needs are as far as the jobs are concerned. And that allows me to know about Curari, know about our history, know about what we can do. And I can rather than just setting general things as far as reading off a list of this is what Curari does, I know that information and I can tailor that to what their needs are and how I'm building value, touching on those particular needs and building value on what Curari can do for them. And what that ultimately ends up doing is that ends up creating desire. If we know what their needs are, we're building value in what Curari does, and then we can create desire in them, and they're like, okay, I'm excited about this. That helps. And with a brand new client, if we're understanding what their needs are and they're understanding what we can do for them, their anticipation on what Curari is going to be able to do for them, we can be pretty high. We can create that desire and we can create that excitement. Then the key is that we deliver. So I think one of the really important things in this initial process when we get a client on board is managing expectations to under promise and over deliver. Because, like, for instance, this telemedicine client, I told him, yeah, it's going to take us about a week to get going. Don't expect a lot from us from in a week. And Chris said, well, you know what? It's good because I'm really busy Wednesday and Thursday. You may not hear from me. And I'm like, oh, that's no problem. Our marketing team has to get going. My colleagues are going to have to start looking for candidates. Probably won't get in touch with you until next week. Well, we've sent them 10 name clearing emails in a day in the last probably 24 to 36 hours. And he and I are talking right after this meeting, so we're going to get a lot of these names cleared. But it was the under promising and over delivering. So if he was excited coming out of that initial discussion after the agreement was signed, and I have overproduced on what I told him I was going to do, then all of a sudden that excitement from him goes through the roof. And if we can happen to close a candidate with him quickly, then needs that he has that probably aren't open to us right now are going to open to us in the future. So if you do those first four steps, the two least important things, which in most sales processes are the most important, overcoming objections and closing the sale, um, become much easier. Because if you do all this, if you find their needs, build values, create desire, the amount of objections are going to be less, and the objections that you have to overcome are pretty darn easy. And a lot of times, if you are doing this entire process right, you never ask for the sale. The client, the candidate, whoever it is, they ask you, well, how do we get started? What are the next steps? When you're talking to a candidate, I get that a lot where they'll say, well, go through all of this. And I won't say, can I present you? They'll say, well, how do I get in touch? What is the next steps? Well, I just need to present your information over to the client. Um, so no, I just wanted to kind of go over um, some of that as far as a, first step, as far as building rapport, going through the 7 steps of every sale. Um, does anyone, before we go to the next thing, the next item, does anyone have any questions on that, or anyone have any discussion topics that they, want to just kind of talk about to amplify that they've had experience with their own clients?
I've had that conversation, Jeremiah, with the Houston client of mine pretty quite a bit, and a majority of it, it's not exactly what are you looking for. It's more what do you not want? Like what doesn't work well for you? What do you want to avoid? Like those type of conversations. Asking that kind of open-ended conversation or question for myself usually leads into them vomiting. Hey, this is what we don't want because this is what works best from us. So using that and just not always, like you said, after you get what they do and don't want, It doesn't have to be business, 24/7. Say, oh man, it's been hot over here. How about there? Like he's in Houston. I tell him how hot it is in South Carolina. He laughs, and then we go on for 5 minutes on a tangent, come back, and that definitely has helped increase my relationship with them. That's just something very small I've used in a few different clients of just you don't always have to hammer down 24/7. You can have a conversation about life and whatever else outside of it, and then circle back, and they'll look at you as more of a person, as to more just a piece of their business. And that, for me, that's worked out for myself.
Yeah, if you get them to open up and reduce their guard a little bit, not only are they more comfortable and be willing to share more, but it potentially could open up to more jobs being shared with you or more things that aren't open to you right now. And then I think the other thing, Levi, too, with your client there in Houston, and I've kind of heard that you've had better success with them recently, is that like the one that I'll talk about that we've had tons of success with, Jiva Health, recently. It took us 6 months to really get things moving with them. The first 6 months were rocky. Like nothing was moving because we just didn't have the processes going. So I had to be pretty, I had to keep working with them. And finally, I had to be pretty bold with them and say, this process that we agreed to just is not working. And I'm not going to be successful for you unless we change our process. So we had to work, the point of contact and I, we had to team. It wasn't the point of contact saying, well, this is how we do things and this is what you need to do. It started off that way. And then I'm like, well, that's not working because we're not getting anyone really moving. So let's talk about how we can change the process to accomplish what we both want, to place doctors with you. So sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes time to develop these clients. Sometimes we have to be the the counselor. We have to be the communicator. We have to be the one that's directing the ship to get them to do what we need to do and not just expect that, oh, okay, this is their process, so we'll just deal with it. We have to constantly be trying to change how they're doing the process to make it more, effective, or we're going to close candidates. Um,
That's
as far,
exactly,
oh,
very
go ahead,
briefly,
Levi.
that's very similar to how that interaction. It was a very rocky 6 months. You know, here and there, there's a lot of like, hey, what's worked out for you? And like, hey, this isn't working. And then I don't think they quite believe me that it wasn't working. And then I sent them a list. It's like, hey, this is our ratio of how many people I've sent you. This is how many people you've interviewed. This is how many. I gave them all the facts, the stats of everything that had happened over 6 months. They promised me they would change. They didn't. And so eventually I told them, hey, listen, I- this isn't successful. This is not, I am investing way too much and there's no return. So all of your jobs, except for one, are now going to go on hold until you can get this right. And within 24 hours, I got a phone call from the CEO. And he's like, hey, listen, what do I have to do to make this work? You tell me what we need to do. And from that point on, it's been a lot better. There's obviously, we can always improve our relationships, but having that come to Jesus moment, so to speak, really set the tone that, hey, I'm not here to play around. I'm here to be successful. And if I'm investing my time into you, I need to get something back from it. So that same situation is what I ran into with them as well.
Absolutely. And later I'm going to talk about different processes and like Jiva Health, what I've done with them exactly, from start to finish, initial growing pains with this brand new client, and then also what we've done with Reed Health, because Reed Health was a 20 plus year client of ours. We had good success with them, and then they turned out to be a terrible client to the point where we were getting ready to not work with them anymore. To the point now where I think it's been 5, 6 placements in the last 2 to 3 months, with a lot more coming. And that really wasn't. I mean, it's partially what we've done, but a lot of it is just getting the right relationships built and the right people, the right points of contact to be in touch with, and how much it can impact us just to have the right people on the client side to work with. Um, so the next topic would be time frame for getting a new client account set up, and that we want to manage expectations on when they'll see candidates, and making clients your top priority to get movement going quickly. So I think when we're talking to a new client, like I was saying, we want to be able to not only manage expectations, but also under promise and over deliver. Because if we say, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and it's this big, audacious thing you're telling them, and you don't produce or you underproduce, that's not going to look good. Whereas if you're just like, okay, you're going to put your whole effort into it, but you're kind of under promising what you're going to do, and then you start producing above and beyond what you said that you were going to do, that looks pretty darn good. So in the beginning, it's like, so I'll use this new client as an example, the expectations that we were managing as far as the timeline. Not only, I was also managing exactly walking them through step by step on the phone, exactly how the name, they're like, number one, it was how do we get candidates for you? How are we presenting candidates? How are we producing them? How are we getting them? Talking about our organic, marketing efforts from individual phone calls, individual emails, our marketing team, through our website, through Curari Crush, through mailers, went through with the client exactly how we're going to about get candidates for them, and then talk about our screening process, talk about how we're just not sending you everybody. We're going to screen these candidates based on what you told us that you want, what your needs are, making sure, and I always express this to clients, what I'm sending you is the maybes and the yeses. What I'm eliminating are the definite no's. I'm not making the hiring decision. You're the one making the hiring decision. So I want to send candidates that potentially could work out and definitely could work out, because we see a lot of potential candidates that we're not sure whether that could work out. They're qualified to be sent on, and sometimes they work out. Many times they work out. So I'm telling the client that, I'm sending you maybes and yeses. Um, and, then talking about the specific name clearing email process, and not just saying, okay, this is how we do it. This is how we normally do it. This is the normal name clearing process that we go through with the majority of our clients, how the emails will look, and I'll ask them, how does that sound to you? Does that sound okay? Do you have another name clearing email process that you currently use? What is your experience in using name clearing emails? So they know the terminology and verbiage because a lot of times if I'm talking to a new client and I say, well, you just have to clear the candidate, and they're like, well, what does that mean? So rather than assuming that they know what it talks about, I'm telling them what we do, as well as asking them, does that sound okay to you? Also understanding what their initial name clearing email process looks like right now, and what it means to clear a candidate, allowing us to introduce the candidate, as well as things that I'll preface right ahead. I'll say, yeah, we talk to some clients at times, and they'll say, oh, I'm aware of that candidate. And so I'll talk to them and say, well, so because you're aware of a candidate doesn't mean you're necessarily in touch with them. Doesn't mean you're actively communicating with them. I can be aware of hundreds of thousands of doctors if I wanted to. It doesn't mean that I have any sort of connection with them, relationship with them. So I make sure I manage those expectations to the client up front. We would look at a clearance as someone that you're not actively engaged in communication with. And most of the time they'll be like, okay, yeah, I understand that. And then from there, I'm managing the expectations on the timing. I'm also managing the expectations on when I expect to hear back from them. Like ideally we'd like to hear from you within the hour, but we understand that you're busy, and within a 24-hour period, we definitely like the name to be cleared. And in turn, what I'm going to do, unless I have something going on, unless I'm unable to do it, I'm going to get that name, I'm going to get that CV and bio back to you, hopefully within the hour. Worst case scenario, within 24 hours, but rarely will that happen. Usually it will be within the hour that I'll have the CV and bio back to you. So I'm acting promptly. I'm setting the precedence. I'm setting the foundation immediately that I'm expecting prompt response, and in return, I'm going to give you prompt response. We're setting that expectation immediately. So we have the standard of we're communicating regularly, we're communicating frequently, and I'm giving you my number one attention. I'm dropping everything for you. When I see your email come in, you are at the top of my list when I see your email come in. I'm asking that you're going to do the same for me too. Just kind of managing those expectations on what my timing is going to be look like, that they are my top priority. And starting off with a brand new client, they are my top priority. I want to get action for them quickly. I want to start that relationship off great. I want to be able to get them candidates right away. I want to be keeping communication with them. I want them to see that I'm working hard for them and that I'm producing for them. So when I'm getting details from the candidate, I'm getting it on the web that day. If they have a marketable job that's worthy of a mailer, I'm doing a mailer that day. I'm setting up a call list that day. I'm, there's obviously circumstances. If it's a Friday, I'm not. But any other time, it's that day. And I may say, like with this telemedicine company, it could be a week because we have processes that we have to go through. It takes time for us to get mailers out. It takes time for me to build these lists and start working with the marketing team. So it could be up until a week before you hear back from me. On the back end, what I'm trying is I'm like, okay, I want to get candidates to them in the next day or two. So I'm doing everything I can to drum up candidates to get to them quickly for them to review right away. So it starts that relationship off on a good foot. So that's kind of the time frame. Kind of open it up to any questions or any feedback that people have with their own clients. This would be a great time to do either right now.
I was just going to say, as part of your follow-up, it's cool to tell your client what exactly you've done for them. So if you send out, they got an internal medicine job and you have emailed 2,000 internal medicine doctors, tell them I've emailed 2,000 internal medicine doctors for you. And I've gotten this response or that response. Then they know you actually did something for them. And the fact that you maybe only got one or two responses is going to get them to think, well, maybe why aren't they responding to this job? And maybe they'll make some changes or give you some better information that you can use to revamp your strategy and get better candidates for them.
Yeah, excellent point, Dave.
And once you get to know them, it's cool to tell them about stuff that you can do that they can't do. I send my clients out in California, all my videos of fireworks because it's illegal for them to have anything that resembles a firework. They get a big kick out of it. Share it with their kids and everything.
Cool. Anyone else on that subject? Okay, next topic is getting details on the jobs. So that's obviously a part of, we talked about our timeline for them, but let's go back to this is a beginning thing. Once you've onboarded a new client, I want to get details on their job. So the ideal is I want to talk to them on the phone about their job, but I also want to send them the Curari job profile form because there might be questions I forget to ask. There might be things that we run out of time for. There might be things that, some people word things written much better than they do verbally. So I'm actually doing it from a twofold process where I'm talking to them about their jobs over the phone. I'm taking notes, whether it's an RMS or on paper, and then inputting that into RMS, and then also sending out that job profile form for them to fill out because they may supply detail. It may be consistent data that I've already have, but a lot of times there's extra data that I don't have that's very helpful. So I'm doing both via phone and job profile form to get as many details as possible. That's the ideal. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes they don't want to talk. Sometimes they're like, just send me your form. Other times they only want to talk via phone, and sometimes they'll just give you a link to their job. But ideally, it's talk on the phone, send their job profile form, because the majority of our placements come from smaller hospitals, smaller practices, not the big health systems. So our most successful clients, a lot of them, we are going to be able to get them on the phone. We are going to be able to talk about their jobs. We are going to be able to get them to fill out the form. And that would be the most ideal, as long as you can do it. I think understanding their compensation structure and other specific details I think are really good. And I think in a lot of states now they have to disclose a lot of that. So I mean, the more information, it's not that we share all that information because nothing's worse than sharing details on a job that's non attractive to someone. Like, oh, I've got this primary care job that pays $200,000. Well, I'm not gonna probably put that in an advertisement, but it's good for me to know. And vice versa, if there's really attractive details in the job, we want to make sure we get that out there. So, trying to get an emphasis on their compensation structure. And then if they say, we're not really comfortable sharing that, or we share that at the interview, that's a completely different discussion. Great topic for you to talk to your managers about, but it's overcoming those objections on how to get the compensation details and other details in the job that's really important, even if you never share them. So overcoming those objections to get those details, even if they say no, is important. And then I like to find out, their most sellable points. It could be the elevator speech. It could be their mission statement. Whatever that is, we want to know what their most sellable points are about their organization, their jobs, and their community. So what is it that would attract a candidate to their job? You're asking the client that, like, what is it about your community that's most attractive, that's most sellable? What is it about the job that's most sellable, that's most attractive, and the organization? What sets your organization apart? Because that's stuff that clients care about. They want to live somewhere they like a lot of times. They want to, obviously their job, it's not just money. There has to be attractive features about the job. So what is it about their job that sets it apart from another job that's a similar specialty? And organizationally, they have to like where they work. So what is it about? Could be a great retention rate. It could be a wonderful lifestyle, work-life balance. It could be a great admin team that is, highly thought after. Anything that's sellable, we want to be able to identify, because we're going to market the what out of that, because those are the things that doctors care about, those along with obviously compensation. What makes their community sexy, so to speak, and why someone would want to live there. So yeah, those are the details on the job section. Anyone have any questions or comments on that? Questions?
Where is the job form on RMS that you referred to?
Or Dave's or Logan or Jerry or someone, do we have that in the useful links?
Yes, that is in useful links.
Yeah,
Okay.
I see it right here. It's called job. It's under useful documents, job order form. I'm looking at it right now. So yes, that is, it's easy just to send that to a client. So I would definitely, like I said, encourage you to talk to them and send them the form, because it's a fillable PDF. They don't have to print it out. They can do it from their computer, click save, send it back to us. Doesn't get much easier than that.
I'll just add a little something here.
Yeah.
I'm actually traveling, but if you guys do a little research on the client before you start kind of getting into asking them the questions, you can know things about them, and you'll just show that you're kind of serious about what you're doing. It's just a small group. You look at their website, look at their docs, see where their docs went, see if any of them are looking like they might be retirement age. Bring up those questions that you bring to the table from your own research on this brand new client that you have, and they're going to think, wow, this person's pretty serious, and they've done a bunch of research already. They know some really good questions to ask. So that was just something I wanted to recommend, as to show that you're serious about what you're doing and you're willing to do some research as well, instead of just asking questions.
Outstanding point, Dave. It's like, it goes back to that thing I was saying about being interested in the client. And it's nothing shows your interest in them like you already know about them. You already know about their community, and talking points, that common ground where you're like, you bring up things about their organization, bring up things about their community, and that's an awesome, excellent point, Dave. Be prepared when talking to your client, and do some research on the organization and community. It's great for the client to hear, but also can save you some time on the phone with them too.
a couple of things that have helped me, kind of on that consultative manner and approach of like adding on as to like the why. Why are you hiring? You know, what problems are you trying to solve? What goals are you trying to achieve? And how will this person fit in that, fit in that problem? And how will they help you achieve those goals? Because it's not going to be relevant for all positions, but if a private practice is trying to grow by X amount by whatever date, or if they're trying to get bought out in 3 years, so they need this person, they're going to offer partnership, and a lot of things that won't necessarily come out in a job description, because it kind of helps to identify, sell, and close candidates, and subsequently provides the client with candidates who like know more than just like the job description and website, and can have that knowledge before going in.
Okay, as far as the next section on client, current process, and expectations, one thing I like to do too, as part of the onboarding process, is I like to understand what their current process is. They may not work with recruiting companies at all, and then that's awesome because we can just tell them what needs to happen. But I want to get a good idea of what they're currently doing. I want to know how they're clearing candidates and how long does it take for them to clear a candidate. I want to know after they receive a candidate, how do they connect with the candidate? When do they call or video? What are they currently doing? How long does it take for them to connect with a candidate, and how are they doing it, and how are they involving the recruiting company? What should we expect? Are they just gonna reach out to the candidate? Are they gonna copy us on an email? Are they gonna notify us that they have reached out? Are they gonna, like I said, ask for us to coordinate it? What are they currently doing? And then, asking them, do you do phone calls? Do you do video calls? We have some clients that they won't even do phone calls. They'll just go right to video. So what is the video calling process with them? When do they do on-site interviews? I've got some clients that don't even do on-site interviews much and just will go right to the offer, but most do obviously, of course. So it's when do they interview in that process? And how much time should we expect from the time they talk to a candidate to them interviewing them? Do they have to go through this internal process of review and talk to boards and shareholders, all these different people in order to interview someone, or do they just go boom, boom, right into the interview? And so understanding that process and how long that takes. And then after the interview, how long does it take for them to get an offer? What's their offer process? Do they, reference checking, do they do it before the interview? Do they do it after the interview? How long after the interview does it take for them to get an offer? And what does it entail for them to get an offer? And knowing all of that is really important to manage those expectations, to know the process, to know the timing. So as you're following up with them, you kind of know, like, okay, phone call, it usually takes X amount of time to do an on-site. After the on-site, it usually takes this amount of time to get an offer. And so you're kind of knowing then when following up with them with the process, or when your colleagues are asking you questions on, hey, can you follow up with this? You kind of know, well, here's the process that it normally takes, and so this is the appropriate time for me to follow up with them. So you know that what their current process is and what their current expectations are, but what they currently do and what's best are rarely the same. Rarely does it happen where we see a client's process when we're starting with them and being like, wow, they got it together. Because if they had it together, they probably wouldn't need us. So that's why the building a rapport and the knowing you, liking you, trusting you is so important, because it's very important that we direct the ship, that we have influence over the process. So when we know what works best for Curari. We know what gets from people to point A to point B in the most efficient, timely way. So we can't just say, all right, this is exactly what you need to do. We have to be adaptive a lot of times with the client. So we look at what they're doing, and then we help suggest to them, we help control that, direct that ship on how they could improve their current process to make it more effective and at the end result, place doctors quicker, which is going to generate more revenue for them. And, you know, with that common ground of you want to fill this position as quickly as possible, right? Let me show you how to do that, and just walk through their process step by step, clearing the candidate, what they're currently doing, and maybe what they could change a little bit to make it more effective and efficient for them. Everything down the line for, you know, when they call the candidates or how they reach out to the candidates. A lot of times, you know, client clears a candidate, they'll send them an email. We have no idea. So one of the things that, you know, if they say, if they're adamant about coordinating that call, recently, not recently, for quite a long time now, I've been saying, please copy me on that email to the candidate so I can let the candidate know immediately that you've reached out and they're expecting, you know, your communication, which greatly improves the chances that the candidate's going to get back to them in a timely way. Ideally, if we're doing a send out, we've already have the candidate's phone availability, so we can provide that to the client up front. Here's their availability. Here's when they can talk. What time, not let me know what works for you. What time works best for you based on the candidate's availability. So it's best to do the send out and have the time already set up, so you're cutting out a step of having to go back to the candidate. It doesn't always work that way, but the more you're involved in the process, the more you're, you know, have a heads up on what's going on, the better it is. So that's, you know, another thing as far as setting up calls. Helping them to advise them on the most ways to be efficient. Video calls, and we're not going to have time to get through all this, but how to conduct their video interviews in the most efficient way, how to do their interviews in the most efficient way, or timeliness wise. And a lot of these big organizations, it doesn't work that way, but at these smaller organizations, we can help them to set up what's most effective in their interview process, and most effectively, you know, like we all know, TKD, what happens if they take too much time in between these steps? What's going to happen? And what we all know that's going to happen is the likelihood of that candidate placing is significantly less, and they're going to be missing out on a lot of candidates whose other clients are being much more proactive. So that's why it's so important that we shrink that process. We streamline that process, and we get it to be much more efficient. And what the client needs to know, how that benefits them, is that they're going to have a much greater, higher caliber pool of candidates, and they're going to place these doctors much more effectively, efficiently, and quickly. That's going to fill their staffing needs much better and ultimately improve their organization revenues, so forth. So that's where we have to understand and help them, not just tell them what you're doing is wrong and this is what you need to do, but help educate them on what we would suggest and why that's going to benefit them. You know, like Tom was saying, give them the why. Why is this going to help you out? For us, you're doing the name clearing process this way, and you get in touch with the candidate post clearance this way. But if we were to change it to this is how it benefits you. And so I like to get that all done up front. And one point that Levi made and I've made about Jiva Health is client had a certain process. And I'm sure Levi too was like, this would be the most effective way to do it. Client does it the way they want. 6 months passes, no effectiveness whatsoever. Client comes back to us and you know, maybe they're upset with us because we're not being effective. Maybe they're frustrated because they're not getting things filled. And then we can say, well, remember what we talked about in the beginning, these really effective, efficient ways. Let's now look at, sometimes clients think they know what to do and they need to fail first in order to be able to maybe be open to what we're saying if they're not open in the beginning. So sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you're not going to hit a home run with the client right off the bat. And that's why keeping in touch, keeping with good rapport, keep following up with them. So eventually, at some point, you have the influence over their process from start to finish, because the more influence we have, the more our fingerprint is on that process, the much more effective we are going to be at placing their jobs. So in regards to the client current process and the Curari process that we want to institute, any questions or feedback on that? Okay. So, and then to kind of land the plane on this whole discussion, it's pretty easy. We've gone through a lot of this right away. Start the process. Make sure you're covering it from all angles. Don't just, put a job in. Make sure you're putting the bait text in. Make sure you're doing the the scripts, the send out previews. Make sure all your scripts are ready for telephone calls, text messaging, whatever you're going to be doing to reach out to to candidates, mailers, profiles database, definitive healthcare, Curari Crush. Hit these jobs from every angle, as well as the fast attributes, the new fast attributes thing that we have in RMS. So colleagues can search if there's certain things about their job that check one of those fast attribute points. We all can search them really quick. But yeah, drop what you're doing, put the priority on this new client, get results for them immediately, and just start the process and don't wait. And hit it from because at Curari, one thing I tell a lot of people is you have to be your recruiting portfolio has to be very diverse. And there's so many different ways through Curari that you can get candidates with these new jobs. Like we said, it's the direct calling, the direct emailing, the mailers, the profiles database, the definitive healthcare, the Curari Crush, all these different ways that we can do it. Use it. So starting the process and then making sure that whatever you promise to a client is the last point would be to follow up on the promises and turn them into a revenue producer. Talking with Jerry today, yesterday, one of the things he wanted a definite put an emphasis on is TKD. Impress, produce, and quickly turn around things. Build a foundation immediately for loyalty. We want clients that are going to be loyal to Curari, clients that like us, that like working with us, and are loyal to us. So there's no better way to do that, to start that foundation, because you can always mess it up in the future, or you can always build it in the future. But there's no better way to build that foundation immediately than get them quick results. Another point that I've written down is what I do is I set a dedicated time, put it on my schedule, not just like, oh, I'll get to it here. For me, it's Wednesday afternoons at usually 1:00. I follow up with every client I have. And I go through their futures. And so that's where the follow-up comes in. I look at every future that's active and existing through the client's page, and I go through it. And now we have this great tool where I'm just looking it up really quick. The progress report update box in the client and the candidate future, where we can update clients really quickly. We can update our colleagues really quickly. And as we start building that and putting more info into the process report update, on the client page under their client futures, or under the client futures is the tab. That's something that you can export really easy to your colleagues, to the client. It's a really quick and easy way to follow up on all of these futures, because you want to keep that futures page lean and mean and up to date, and you don't want anything that's going to be too old in there. So if it's filled or old or dead, you close it out. So you keep only the things that are active, and that allows for that follow-up that should be, because you're going to have organic follow-ups with your client, things that pop in on a minute-by-minute basis, things that have to be covered right now. But a general follow-up with your client should be done at least once a week, or I'd say once a week. So you're on top of everything. So nothing is, because as we know in this business, one of the main detriments to placing docs is things falling through the crack. Too much gap in between communication. And one of the best ways to do that is something like this, where you set dedicated times to follow up with clients, because you're just staying on top of it. And it's much less likely that things are going to fall through the cracks. So the last screen I kind of wanted to share with you is, or just talk a little bit about the process with these 3 clients that I brought up, and then we'll conclude. Is the new client that I was talking about. We spent 3 to 4 hours, somewhere in that 2 to 4 hour range, on the phone with this whole thing that we talked about, finding their needs, knowing everything about their organization, letting them know everything about Curari, and how we would like to go through the processes. And sure enough, we get started the first couple days, and it's not to what I would expect to be effective. So it's one of those things where we're a week into this with the new client, but we're going to have a conversation today about, how, because in one conversation, he's not going to get it. He's not going to get how this process can benefit him the best. So I'm going to have a follow-up conversation with him today and just talk about our first week, and how, important it is to the timeliness of responding to name clearing emails, and then us to reiterate and re-talk about, okay, all these CVs and bios are coming to you now. How do we get, how do you review this, and how do we get the ones that you're most interested on the phone with immediately? And so I could have with Chris this conversation today. I'm not expecting this to be everything to be secured and us have a great foundation. I'm expecting multiple conversations with Chris in the next month to really streamline this process, so we're both on the same page, so we're working together, to have a process that's effective and very efficient. And it might, each effective, efficient client management is going to be a little bit different, because we have to, mold what we do into what they do as well too. With Jiva Health, it was kind of like what Levi and I were talking about, is that it was a long process. The first 6 months were not good. They were not good at all. And so finally, when we got into like February, March, and things, they were getting frustrated. And so we just, basically what I did, one of the first things I did is I set a calendar invite every week where me and the point of contact were talking at the same time every week. And we were talking about each candidate, or we were going through all the candidates and their organization every week. And because we were doing it weekly, the phone calls were 15 minutes. We got in and out, and we were communicating via email throughout the week. But that was very helpful. Now, it's not part of the normal Curari process, but one thing I found out quickly to improve their processes is the recruiter promised me that they would clear names within the 24 hours, which they did. And then what I would do is I would get the CV and bio, and she shared a link to the CMO for scheduling calls with them. So I would get the CV, the bio, and the majority of the time I would schedule the call. So when after the name was cleared, I was sending them the CV, the bio, and the phone call was already set up. The phone call is already set up with Dr. Junaid. And then, so we got to that point, and that was good. But then where we hit the stumbling block at that point was the next point in their process was having a video call set up with their other operations person. So we were then having a difficult time. I couldn't schedule those video calls, so then I was reliant on Jiva to get me video times for that, for that operations person. So that took us a little bit of time to get that more streamlined, and basically it was a tougher conversation with Jiva to say, hey, we missed out on these candidates because the process took too long to get them a video call. It's really important that we get that set up. And then it came to, getting the offer to them. And so that whole process got a lot more smooth. And we ended up, starting to sign doctors. Then we had a new point of contact take over. And so I had to start over from square one. And what we ended up doing with that person is, so I told that new person about the progress report update, where I could just send them that report every week. And they're like, no, I want something more interactive. So what we ended up doing, and I'm not saying everyone should do this, but we ended up creating a Google Docs that was live to both he and I, that had, and I'm looking at it right now. Basically I segmented it off into 3 sections: candidates to clear, candidates in process, candidates who signed. And then I had different sections, their specialty, their desired location, the date we presented, the call with Dr. Junaid, the video with Dr. Anita, offer presented, if they were going to do a site visit, when that was, and any notes that I had. And so he and I had that live and active at all times. That was another step that I had to do with him that just kind of streamlined the process. So I know we created a ton of value with them. Now, the difficult part is they got back to us recently and said, yeah, 25K is too much. You're placing way too many doctors with us. We want you to do it for 15K. It's like, nope. Well, we're going to have that discussion on Monday, but it's going to be like, yeah, we're not doing it for a penny under 25. And, if you want to, this is all the value. So it goes back to that process and the value that we created, what we've done for them, going above and beyond and exceeding their expectations by placing a ton of doctors with them, 5 already, within a couple months. And so it's like, all right, if you want this to go away and you want this level of service to go away, and if you can get that same level of service from someone else at 15,000, knock your socks off, go for it. But like Dave Woody said, and he said it to me and other clients, they're going to be back. So I'm anticipating them saying either nope or maybe work on our really tough searches, but I know they'll be back in the future just because of the level of service that we gave them. And then finally, Reed Health. Reed Health, what happened there is, so they had a team of people that we had decent success with them, but they were kind of always not, they were a typical larger hospital that was just not great to work with. And they had a whole team of recruiters and placement here, placement there. They ended up firing their whole team. And then they brought this new point of contact in who just, I don't know how to sugarcoat, just sucked. Just as bad as a recruiter could possibly suck. She did. And we ended up to the point where I think Jerry even reached out to the CEO. And within, I don't know if that phone call did it or had an influence on it, but within a couple months after that, she was fired. And then they brought in a lady by the name of Mackenzie, who used to work for Meridian Health. And Mackenzie and I knew each other. So we immediately had interaction going. We immediately had good things going. And then they brought Rebecca in, who I hit it off with immediately. And now I have to look, like 6 placements in 2 or 3 months. And we've got a number of docs who are in process right now. And it just came down to getting the right points of contact in. The whole process that I'm talking about, the building a rapport and that whole 7 steps and understanding their process. And because they're a bigger hospital, we can't interject our process too much, but we're right in the middle of it. They're super rapidly responding. They updated us on all communication. They asked for our help in getting things set up. We've got a couple doctors over the finish line because we have a copy of their contract and we're reviewing it with the doctors at the point, where they're about ready to sign. So we are working as a team with the recruiters at Team Health or at Reed Health, excuse me. And we're truly a team, the 3 of us. And so we're able to get so much going because I have the buy-in from them. I'm getting results for them, and they're someone who's responding super quick, who are doing things well, and we are following in return. So we were able to take a negative relationship with a Reed, now turn it into a great one. So sometimes it just works that way. Sometimes it can take the right person or sometimes the wrong person to take a good or bad relationship and turn it around. So as a whole, does anyone have any, through this entire onboarding discussion, anyone have any questions or any feedback that they would like to give before we depart today?
I had one quick question, more so along with just kind of existing clients that we already have, but I've ran into a couple that have recently had jobs that they've notified me of, and just in the last week or two, then I've sent them the form, said, hey, this is, can you please fill this out? And a lot of people are out of the office. Knowing 100% that they do have the need, they've informed me, and they said, hey, I'm going to be out this week, especially with the 4th and the holiday weekend. What is your process in regards to that? And they've told me, I'll get the form to you as soon as I'm back from vacation. Things like that. Summer, people being out of the office, but knowing 100% there is a need there for a new opportunity. Are you putting that quickly in our RMS so at least the job is there on the board? And then as soon as the client's back, get all the information, the details as soon as possible. I mean, that one's kind of, I've ran into that a little bit just in the last week or two where people have been so in and out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm putting the data, whatever data I have, I'm putting in there as quickly as I can. I'm putting in the data right away and letting the client know, like, my results and my effectiveness until we have more necessary information or more communication between us about the job is, going to be limited. I'm going to put everything I can into your job, but just know the lack of details and data is going to really limit, what I can attract candidates to. Very few times can I just put out, okay, here's a X specialty job in X location and with no details and get them a bunch of candidates. Obviously some locations you can, but the majority of the time you can't. So I just let them know, hey, I'm going to put the job in, my colleagues are going to see it, but don't expect a lot of movement until we get more information. And as soon as we have good, ample information that's marketable and sellable, you will see activity from me. So that's usually how I propose it. But whatever I have, I put in there. And sometimes it's nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I've ran into that a little bit just in the last week or two, especially with the holidays. So.
And you just let them know, like, hey, you're bringing us aboard because you want me to be effective. You want Curari to be effective for you, and this is how we are effective for you. And
Cool.
and just set that stage. Like, the less we get from you, the less effective we're going to be.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll get all the details. The individual communicates really well, but yeah, just out on vacation. So I'm sure I'll have them as soon as possible. But yeah, just was curious in that
That's where
regard.
the key, Mitch, comes in, is to follow up. When they get back.
Yep.
Maybe not that day. Maybe you let them get their feet underneath them for a day, and then next day start following up.
Yep.
Details.
Cool.
So I would just like
All
to
right.
add, I did a little study, and the people that are having success tend to have about 6 to 10 clients that they are working on. So taking the information that Jeremiah's putting out here and using it to get yourself these clients that you can go back to again and again, it is definitely proving that if you've got good clients spread throughout the country and you're working on finding candidates for those clients, that you'll have more success. I mean, we just keep seeing it more and more and more. The clients are the ones that pay us. You get a good relationship with them. They give you better details. That makes you look like you know what you're doing more. More candidates come to you, regardless of if they're interested in that job or not. And the success just builds on top of it. So getting these clients and doing this information, doing what Jeremiah's talking about, it can really move you forward in production really fast.
Yeah, because what I hear from a lot of recruiters is that they don't have enough docs to work, and the best way, the most qualified docs to work are the ones that come to you, and the best way to get a higher volume of docs that come to you is having good clients that you're using their jobs for bait, that the clients or the candidates come to you. Best ones to get, and there's no way to do that. Well, you can do it, one-offs, job here, that are not owned or exclusive by someone else. You can definitely use non-owner exclusive clients to do that. But hey, you get a client of your own that you sign up on a new CFA, get some good job details, and it's a sellable job, you're going to get candidates to work. Bait and switch. Use the bait to either use candidates to present to their job, but then other jobs too.
And you can do this with clients that you don't own. I mean, just
Yeah.
open candidate. You build a relationship, even if it's just an open client, and really, work them and give them the same kind of attention. Then you can bump them up in a fee agreement and get bonuses for them. And before long, you turn that into an exclusive of your own. So it's worth it to do this with open clients as well. You don't have to just own somebody or have them exclusive to be able to go out and do this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. Another thing that I would recommend to everyone is look at the new jobs daily. or like 4-day old. I think it's 4-day old in order for you, because there's a lot of jobs that are put in that don't have details. I know there's a lot of jobs that I put in. I either don't have the details on or don't have time to put on the web, for whatever the reason may be. And so look at of course, look at new jobs every day, but also look at 4-day old jobs, because there's a lot of jobs out there that are not owned, and you have the opportunity to put them on the web and do mailers if they're good jobs or worthy of a mailer. Or it's a great opportunity for you to reach out to a client. Hey, I didn't see, I need to get more details in this, however you're going to phrase that, but it's a great opportunity for you to reach out to new clients that you haven't interacted with, to build that said rapport relationship with. And there's a lot of, well more than 50% of the jobs, Dave probably knows the exact stat, well more than 50%, I know that for sure, that are not on the web, that don't have the sellable points and the bullet points. Great opportunity to do that and to get client interaction, because the client interaction is what leads to the candidates.
And I will say, if you pitch a job that you know really, really well to a candidate, they are like, nah, that's not what I'm looking for. They're more likely then to give you better indication of what they are looking for, because you've known that job, you've come across to them as knowledgeable, as somebody you don't come across as them as well. I think maybe, but you got, here's details. Here's this job. I know what I'm talking about. And that subconsciously tells that candidate that you're somebody that knows what they're talking about. And maybe this wasn't the right job, but they can tell you about it, and you can come back at them with that kind of job, because you've just shown them that you know what you're talking about.
And Dave's absolutely right, because, that's such a competitive industry we're in. It's, the candidates are talking to who knows how many recruiters. The clients have a bunch of recruiters, or recruiting companies they're talking to. So we have to set ourselves above and beyond everyone else. We have to, people have to believe that we are experts in the industry, that you individually are an expert in what you're doing. And so by you setting yourself in that way, or giving that impression off to the client or the candidate, that allows you to be memorable. And if you are memorable, in a good way, I've been memorable in bad ways to candidates, and clients. But if you're memorable in a good way, that's going to set you above and beyond with this incredibly competitive field that we're in. And so what Dave's saying is absolute. Whatever competitive advantage you can give yourself, and to make yourself more memorable, make Curari more memorable, it's going to benefit you considerably. Well, cool, y'all. Well, I was talking about the big agenda for next week for Jerry's roundtable. Actually, there's no agenda. he may provide something I'll pass along Wednesday, but Jerry's topic is going to be AMA. Anyone know what AMA stands for? I didn't either until I asked him. It's ask me anything. It's going to be just a open discussion. Jerry's going to lead it, and it's going to be basically ask the CEO whatever you want to ask him. And so I don't know if Jerry will or will not put anything together for next week, but I do know that that's going to be the topic. It's just going to be a open discussion, talking to the CEO, asking him whatever questions that you have that you have. So that is our topic for next week, and then Logan's after that. So before we depart today, anyone have any final questions, comments before we depart for the weekend? Well, cool. Well, everyone, thanks for joining. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I hope that your weeks next week are super, super productive. And oh yeah, wanted to also make sure I mentioned that we're in that tagline contest. I think we have some good taglines for, potentially a new tagline for Curari. So any taglines that you guys can think of where you can kind of cement your legacy with Curari for the tagline that we would use for this foreseeable future, please get those over. and I don't know when we'll be voting on it, but I'm sure it will be soon. So yeah, if you have a good tagline, please send it over.
Jeremiah.
All right, guys. Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
Jeremiah.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
too.
Have a good week.
Thanks, guys.
Hey,
Have a
good
good
information.
weekend.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
All right, bye, guys.